Alright, this is for you Christians out there. You may find yourself wondering what the right thing is to do sometimes. What the right thing to do is sometimes. In other words, maybe you wonder, well, as a kid you may wonder, should I do what my parents say or not? Well, you're invariably going to wind up going back to a Bible verse that says, obey your parents. And maybe you wonder, should I have sex before marriage? You wind up going to a Bible verse that says, don't have sex before marriage. You wonder, is it okay for me to go get drunk and act a fool? You'll find a Bible verse that says, don't get drunk and act a fool. And the basic question we have to ask is the question of truth. Is this really true? How do we know the Bible is true? Well, you may think of a lot of different things. You may think about, it all fits, or there's prophecies that support it. And you may be missing the fact that this is a sort of a trick question. The things like that sometimes we mention are good starting points. Like the odds that all these prophecies about Jesus would have come to pass. Those can be good starting points for you to say, I need to look into this more. But when someone says, how do you know the Bible is true? It sounds like they're asking you one question, but they're really asking you three questions. I don't know if you've ever been asked a question that sounds like one, but it's actually more than one. The classic example of this would be, have you stopped beating your wife? Well, no, yes, maybe, I don't know. No, it's a trick question because it asks itself as one question, but the real question is, have you been married? 2, have you ever beaten your wife? And 3, have you stopped? You see? So there's 3 questions hidden there. Are you married? And I guess it would be, are you still married? So you can throw that in as a 4th question. Have you ever beaten her? And then, are you still beating her? And it can be really odd if you ask this question of a girl, or someone too young to even think about marriage. But the real question, when someone asks, how do you know the Bible is true? The thing you have to understand is that this is a 3-part question. Part number 1, does God exist? Okay? That's an important question. Once you answer that question, it doesn't mean you've proved the Bible is true. Next question, what is God like? Okay? And then the final question, is the revelation of who Jesus is Jesus really the one? Is He really the way? So, you got to know, 1, does God exist? 2, what is God like? Because if God isn't anything like the Jesus in the Bible, then you got to throw Jesus out. But 4, even if God has to be like Jesus, we still have to ask ourselves, well, is God like? Is that the particular one, or is He just a copycat or something like that? Alright, so the first question is, does God exist? And what we'll do is we'll go through moral argument for God's existence in hopes that we'll be able to show this briefly and get through it. Point number 1, moral values exist only if God exists. Point number 2, moral values exist. And finally, our conclusion, God exists, therefore God exists. Now, this is what you call a logically valid argument, because it follows that if those first 2 points are true, if the premises are true, the conclusion has to be true. So the question we have to ask is, are the premises true? Well, the first premise is this: moral values exist only if God exists. Okay? Is that true? Well, we have to ask ourselves, what is a moral value? A moral value is just a value of good over evil. It's just an understanding that this is right and that is wrong. A lot of objections get raised, but the simple truth is that for moral values to exist, there must be some sort of idea about what could be, what should be, what might be, what, maybe. In other words, if you want to say that humans just behave in a moral way, that doesn't say morality exists. That simply says that humans just are that way. Morality, in its very essence and what it is, it has to tell you what to do when you're confronted with a choice. When you have a choice where you could do this or you could do that, morality tells you you should do this or you should do that. You know, morality in its essence is about not what is, but what ought to be, or what could be, or what might be, an idea of what should be. And this is why, if atheism is true, moral values cannot exist, because at the essence, the universe just is, and there is no ultimate idea about what ought to be. There is no ultimate good or desire or purpose or plan or anything that says you ought to do this, or this is good behavior, and this is right, and this is the way things should be, and this over here is bad. There is no ultimate is, there is no ultimate ought. There is just is. The universe. If atheism is true, then the universe just is, and it's just there. Now, so premise one holds: if God exists, moral values exist. The next question we have to ask is: do moral values exist or not? And the simple response typically